you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
all in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur.
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs!
And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
On this Tuesday, March 4th, what a night this is for Montreal Canadiens fans, because the Montreal Canadiens have signed Jake Evans. This was kind of hard to believe up until it was announced earlier today at around 1:13 p.m. or something like that Eastern time. Let's see if we can have the tweet that the Montreal Canadiens put out. They agreed to terms on a 4-year contract extension with forward Jake Evans. This was amazing. Everyone knows that Jake Evans is a good player, and everyone knows that regardless of whether you have Jake Evans as your third-line center or your fourth-line center, that he's a pretty valuable player to the Montreal Canadiens. From a points perspective, he's not a player who racks up a lot of points, but this year, there's only 3 forwards who have more points than him. He's a very good face-off guy on this team. He plays almost 16 minutes per game. He's trusted by the coach to play in the final minute of the first, the final minute of the second, the final minute of the third, if they're up by a goal or 2. He's a valuable part of this team, especially on the penalty kill. He is arguably their best penalty killer. And he was a player who was set to be an unrestricted free agent. A player who thought that he was going to be gone. A player who thought that it was over between him and the Montreal Canadiens. And Kent Hughes, I guess we shouldn't be shocked, because we've been accustomed now to him signing players to what seem like almost below market value deals, but he makes them feel really good about it. And he makes them feel really important. And they want to stay here. And they want to play here. And they want to play for Marty St. Louis. And they want to be with these players. And Kent Hughes has given out very, very good contracts. 7.85 per season to Caulfield is a bargain and will continue to be a bargain for many years, for the 6 years that he has left on his 8-year contract that he signed. A long-term deal, 8 years at $7.6 million to Slafkovsky. I know that for some, the jury's still out on that one. I think it's going to end up being a very good contract for the Canadiens. Kirby Dach was signed to a 4-year deal at 3.362. Alex Newhook was signed to a 4-year deal at 2.9. Arbor Jacki was signed to a 2-year deal at 1.3 per season. Samuel Montembeault was signed to a 3-year deal at 3.15 per season. And earlier today, the Montreal Canadiens announced that Jake Evans was signed to a 4-year deal at $2.85 million per season. The Sick Podcast is brought to you in part by Bomboloni. They're known as puffs from heaven. It's fluffy dough and rich filling, differentiated from any other pastry. Available for order at bomboloniboss.com. Customers can build their box with the flavors they choose. Regular size and minis are available. And guess what? 10 metros around the city. Their website has a store locator to find the grocery store nearest you. Chocolate fudge, dulce de leche, pastry cream available. Just thaw for 2 hours and enjoy. bomboloniboss.com. Without further ado, he's a regular every Monday, but the Canadiens played last night. Of course, they beat the Buffalo Sabres by a score of 4-3 in overtime. He was working the game, which means he's available tonight. And yes, by the way, we are live for all of you. Thank you for watching on Twitter, on Facebook, and on YouTube from Sportsnet and sportsnet.ca. Eric Engels, how are you?
Maron, those bumbalonies look good.
They do. You've never tasted them before?
Why am I all blurry?
Yeah, I know. I noticed that. Yeah.
Didn't help. Hold on.
No. Yeah, don't worry about
Let
it.
me check out. I'm going to check back in. Hold on.
Yeah, do that. It's a good idea. All right, okay. In the meantime, by the way, I'll let you know that tonight was a very, very good night for the Montreal Canadiens. Why was it a very good night for the Montreal Canadiens? Because there were hockey games that were played, and a lot of teams that the Canadiens needed to lose, well, they lost. The Boston Bruins lost 6-3 to the Predators. The Buffalo Sabres lost 6-2 to the Sharks. The Detroit Red Wings lost 2-1 to the Hurricanes. The Blue Jackets lost 6-2 to the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Philadelphia Flyers lost 6-3 to the Calgary Flames. And the New York Islanders, though they won, they beat the Winnipeg Jets by a score of 3-2. Devils and Dallas, the game is not over. There's about 15 minutes to go in period number 3. Dallas are up by a score of 3-1. So if we take a look at the standings and where the Montreal Canadiens are in the wild card race going into the game tonight, the Canadiens were 1 point out of the second spot in the wild card, which belonged to Detroit, but now it belongs to the New York Rangers with Detroit losing. The Canadiens are 3 points behind Columbus. So 1 point behind the Rangers, 3 points behind Columbus. All three teams have played the same amount of games. The Canadiens, how hot are they right now? I'm going to tell you exactly how hot the Montreal Canadiens are. With 5 straight wins, the Montreal Canadiens are the hottest team in the National Hockey League right now. And they just got hotter and they just got happier with the contract extension to Jake Evans. Eric, how are you?
Well, before we get to the extension, I just remember before we took to the Four Nations break, you turned to me and said, "You think it's over here? Like, you think they're guaranteed sellers?" And I said, "Listen, I'm not going to sit here and guarantee it for you, but nothing would surprise me. Like, would it surprise me if the Canadiens would come out of the break and win 5 of 6 games going into the deadline and put themselves back in? You know, in the same vein that I was surprised to see them lose 13 of the first 17 games and win 19 of the next 30. Nothing should surprise us with the way the Eastern Conference is going this year. So I don't know what's going to happen from here to the end, Tony. Yeah, but the Canadiens are in it right now. Their goal was to play.
It's exciting, Eric. It's exciting. Cheers to the Montreal Canadiens. And by the way, Eric, cheers to Jake Evans, who's obviously wanted to stay in Montreal. His wife wanted to stay in Montreal. They were heartbroken because they thought that they were leaving Montreal, and he stayed. And cheers. Cheers to Jake Evans. And you know what? Much respect to him, because I think everyone believes that Jake Evans could have got more on the open market. And Jake Evans said, "You know what? I love Montreal. My wife loves Montreal. I love my teammates. She loves my teammates. I love my team. I love my coach. I love my GM. I love the management team. I love the fan base. I love the city. I love everything about it. And you know what? I'm playing good hockey there. And if I go somewhere else to try and get more money, maybe I won't play the same kind of hockey. Maybe I won't be a fit. And you know what? And maybe I won't be happy. So you know what? I'll leave some money on the table, but I'm going to sign because that's where I want to be." Much respect, Jake Evans. Much respect. Cheers to you.
Yeah, I won't do as much speaking for Jake. I think it's obvious that he loves Montreal and wanted to stay. I think that was, that much he said and that much he made clear today in putting pen to paper. In the end, he was holding the cards here. Listen, speaking with sources, he was offered a 4-year deal going back weeks. Okay. Maybe he was holding out for what he hoped would be a better offer. That would be a normal way of approaching it, considering the fact that, as a pending unrestricted free agent in a contract year with the cap going up exponentially over the next 3 and beyond, and with him putting up career numbers that, you owe it to yourself to give yourself the best possible opportunity to get the best possible contract. In the end, I won't speak for Jake, but I think logic prevailed for him in that the Canadiens didn't disrespect him with this offer. They clearly valued him enough to give him 4 years and the type of stability that he would have dreamed of, taking the path that he did to the NHL and proving himself to be the player that he's been. There should be no regrets on either side of the table here. Like this is a really good deal for the Canadiens. That is undeniable, and it will be a good deal all the way through.
Amazing deal.
But this is a really good deal for Jake Evans too. And I don't, he could have, like you said, ended up somewhere else and been far less happy in a different market and having to prove himself all over again with a different team and having to live up to expectations that might be bloated considering what the contract might have been. You figure if things keep going the way they were going, which wasn't guaranteed, he could get hurt tomorrow or the market could shift all of a sudden and he could end up holding the bag. Like, he was probably looking at somebody who would have been willing to give him 5 years on a deal. And maybe a couple extra $1 million too. But when you have a real good thing, and this is
that's exactly what he was looking for. He was looking for a 5-year deal. That's what they asked for. And credit to Kent Hughes, Eric. If I could just add this, is that we always knew that Kent Hughes was amazing in contract negotiation. I mean, quite frankly, that's what he did for over 20 years. He was an agent and he did contracts, right? But he didn't sign Jake Evans when he was producing a few more points, scoring a couple of shorthanded goals. Not to say that Jake Evans hasn't been playing well lately, because he has. His production went down a little bit, and now they signed 3 days before the trade deadline. But another GM probably would have saw him playing amazing at one point. Said, I got to sign him. And then you end up giving a little bit more.
Look, I think what's clear is the Canadiens knew that they were better off with Jake Evans than without him. And I can tell you right now that even if they didn't get this deal signed, as improbable as it sounds, they were willing to roll the dice that they might have another opportunity post-trade deadline and hang on to him if they weren't going to get what they wanted, which I can tell you right now was definitely more than a second-round pick. So, in the end, they valued him enough to give him a 4-year offer. They were not willing to go beyond that, and they were not going to budge. And Kent, it's not just Kent being a shrewd negotiator, which I'll give him full credit. He is a shrewd negotiator. It's just the reality of where the Canadiens find themselves and what they needed to do. When we talked about Evans all throughout this season, Tony, I said to you, when you look at the things that he does, and I'm not talking about the numbers he put up this year, it's great to see him producing, 10 games. In 10 games less, he's right around the career highs that he set in 72 games in, 21-22. What he does is not something you plug in an Owen Beck and expect him to do right away at 21, 22 years old. Owen Beck is definitely on his way to being that type of player, if not a better one, okay? But if you want to be where you want to be as a team that the Canadiens want to get to in the next couple of years and start opening up their contention window, you don't have someone who's 23, 24 years old playing that role. Like, you hope that by the time they're 23, 24, 25, they really get it. And like, speaking of Jake earlier this year, like, I asked him, like, how long did it take before you finally felt like this was the role that you were meant to play, that you could fulfill it to the best of your abilities and be one of the better players in that type of role? And he said it took 300 games. It took until last year until I really felt comfortable there. To have to restart that whole process somewhere else, even if they were paying him like that did what he did in Montreal, that was a risk he didn't have to take because Montreal valued him enough to give him that 4-year deal and give him the type of stability and security that he's earned. And when he comes out of it, he'll be, he turns 29 on July 2nd, so he'll be 33. He'll still have another opportunity to bank. And I think to be on a team like the Canadiens that's on the rise and have as important a role as he has in that team rising, it's a winning proposition. You know what? The only thing that's a losing element
I can't believe he didn't get a no trade though. Like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
How many players who are fourth line centers get no trade clauses? I mean, it's not standard practice around the league, and I don't think it should matter all that much. You get
when you leave money on the table though, you can ask for no trade, Eric.
You can ask, but you're not necessarily going to get it. And are you going to break apart a deal if you don't? I don't think so. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. And I think that comes all the way from ownership down. I will say this: the only downside to this deal is that the next Montreal Canadiens home game is a couple weeks from now. Because I could tell you, Jake was feeling it this last week. You could see it in his play. It hadn't affected him throughout the entire season until the last week where things got serious and it was like, we have to make a decision here and try and figure this out. and it affected him. Like, how special is it going to be for this guy to step on the ice at the Bell Center again now that this contract is done, and know that the fans here totally get the moment and get what it means, and are loving the fact that he chose them, and to be able to reciprocate and show him that love. Like, it's too bad it's a couple weeks away from now. Like, it would have been great if it was tomorrow.
How special is that plane ride to Edmonton, knowing that he doesn't have to say bye to these guys in the next couple of days, and that he's going to be with them for, possibly up to the next 4 years, maybe no more. I'm sure they're going to be so pumped in Edmonton. Like, I can't guarantee they're going to beat the Oilers, but he'll have the task probably of having to try and stop McDavid and or Draisaitl. The Oilers will have the last change. They're at home, and he's going to be so relieved in his head because, who knows if they don't sign him, if they would have held him out of the game, if they would have been close to having a deal on the table with another team.
I don't think they would have done that. I know people have a hard time believing this because he was the most attractive piece that they would have had to trade if they didn't get him signed, but they were perfectly willing to go through this deadline without him signed and without trading him. If it meant that they were not going to get what they thought was the right type of value and a piece that takes them forward in their rebuild, then they would have just eaten it and tried to go at it again for a contract with him later down the line. And if they ultimately couldn't agree on one, then they'd say thank you very much and shake his hand and send him on his way. But I will tell you this, I'm sure they're thrilled that it's done. It's one less thing they have to worry about at the position. And I will also tell you that you should take that as a caution here for anybody else who might be on the block for the Canadiens, okay? It's not to say they won't trade these guys. They might. They might trade Christian Dvorak.
I don't think they will anymore. I don't think they will.
They might trade Christian Dvorak. They might trade Yoel Armia. They might trade David Savard. They might trade just one of the three. They might trade all three. They will not trade any of them if they don't get what would essentially be an overpayment, because they don't have to. And they are fully justified to keep them and let them walk as free agents if that's how it goes down, to maintain what's going on right now. Like, if you're a team out there that's trying to buy one of these players, the cost is not just who they are on the market, it is who they are to the Canadiens right now. You are fighting against the value that they hold to the Canadiens to maintain their place in the race and continue having their young players grow in the best possible circumstances to be growing in, which is a playoff chase. So it's not to say it won't happen. I think even though Dvorak is the most likely to be gone without being re-signed, he's probably the hardest one to move given his contract situation at $5.75 million in actual dollars and $4.45 on the cap, and the Canadiens only having one retention slot. Yeah, I think Armia's value to the Canadiens is stronger than what it is on the market. And unless that changes, I think he probably sticks around. Savard is a real interesting one because he's kind of one of one in the type of defenseman that he is, and there's not anybody else that's a big right-handed defenseman who's a pending unrestricted free agent and is just a rental. Like, the Canadiens still would like to get some playing time for Reinbacher and Mailloux up here at some point this season. I know people are like so worried about undoing Laval. Like, Laval is 1 point out of first place in the AHL. Nothing completely screwed them up over 20 games here. Like, it is important to get those guys experience. And I would even suggest that if Savard stays through the deadline, they will still get some experience up here from here to the end of the season. One, if not both. So there's a lot that's on the table here. The best news for Kent Hughes, the best news of what happened, I think everybody thought this 5-game winning streak would make it really hard for the Canadiens management. I think it's made it really easy for them to just stick their guns on their prices and live with whatever will be, will be.
The Sick Podcast is brought to you in part by Betway. Go all the way with Betway and get a free bet up to $200 if your first bet loses. Scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link in the details section to create an account. Redeem your welcome offer. Offers only available for new customers. Terms and conditions apply. Offers not available in Ontario. Must be 18 years of age and older. And please play responsibly. Are the Montreal Canadiens going to make the playoffs? Is Lane Hudson going to win the Rookie of the Year? You can get in on the action and go all the way with Betway. Eric, and I'm probably going to say this for the rest of the week. And I understand it. Business is business. I think Kent Hughes sent an amazing message to the Canadiens dressing room, to Marty St. Louis, the staff, the coaches, everyone, the fan base today. I'm not going to tell you that I don't think he can get rid of players like Armia or Dvorak or Savard right now, but I almost feel like he can. Like, I think now he's got the message is, once again, I understand it's all relative. It all depends on what they're going to be offered. If anything, I expect Kent Hughes to try and go up and try and get a second line centerman.
What are the New York Rangers doing right now?
What are they doing right now?
They committed to selling players. They've sold players. They've also brought players in.
Yeah.
They said enough with Capo Caco. They brought in Will Borgen.
Yeah.
They brought Calvin DeHaan in the deal that sent the guys over to the Avalanche.
Mm-hmm.
And they're winning games. The Canadiens just rattled off 5 wins in a row without Caden Gooley and basically Kirby Dach for a lot of it. Like,
well, yeah, but they're making deals, but I'm not sure they're getting worse. I think, they've added some pretty good players. If the Canadiens can add better players and the players are going to part ways with, yes, I get it.
Well, I don't know that the Rangers added better players than the players they parted ways with, but they added ones that could still help them. And I think the Canadiens are in that type of situation where, they want another second, third round, fourth round pick for this guy or that guy. Not necessarily. Can they make swaps that make sense for them in some way? I think that's what they're looking at. When you talk about getting a second line center, I think a lot of the seeds can be planted. And I'm almost willing to make a guarantee that between now and the beginning of next season, one is coming here. I would, and I don't mean through the draft. Like, they'll either trade for one or sign one. But
of course, they need to play Demidov with somebody.
One is coming here. Okay. Do I expect it to happen between now and Friday? I think the seeds for it could be sown then, but I don't. It's not the type of deal that gets done right now.
I would try. I think there's some players that could be had.
Yeah, you can try, but ultimately, it's not the type of thing that you sit back and say this should happen. Like, it's one of the things that, like, maybe it could. It's not traditionally the type of deal that happens around the deadline, although a lot of the groundwork does tend to get set in those discussions. And then you get to the offseason and these things tend to unroll and unfold as they do. Sometimes that's beneficial too for teams that are in the selling chair in those situations, because it's opportunity for those players to prove up a bit more value than they currently have. They wouldn't be available. Like, take one player, for example, because everybody's talking about him, Dylan Cousins, right?
Yeah.
Now, Dylan Cousins, I don't think he has an opportunity to worsen his value much between now and the offseason, but he definitely has one to improve it. Like, there's definitely a chance for him to put a better image on this season that he's having from here to the end of it than there is that he's going to make it that much worse if he doesn't perform. He's got 31 points this year. Like, we know he's a better player than that. He knows he's a better player than that. Buffalo Sabres know he's a better player than that. And considering they're in a perpetual rebuild, I don't think they want to sell him at his very lowest.
I got a name for you. You ready?
I have one for you too.
Give me one.
No, I want to hear yours first. I want to see if it's the same guy.
Well, I mean, a lot of people are looking at Ryan O'Reilly. Obviously, he's got 2 years left on his deal. He pays $4.5 million a year, but I think obviously you're going to have to give up quite a bit. I want to give you a player that I think can be had, and I don't think you have to give up that much in return. But then again, the other team can ask whatever they want. Ryan Donato. Ryan Donato, 28 years old, turns 29 in April. Centerman. Shoots left. Son of a former hockey player, by the way, Ted Donato. 6 foot, 200 pounds, former second-round pick. Having a career season with one of the worst teams in the National Hockey League, who want to get younger, who want draft picks, or might want a prospect. His contract is up at the end of this year. He makes $2 million. He's a UFA. They're probably going to use him for nothing at the end of the year. He's having a career year. He centers a line with Teravainen and Mahayev. He's the centerman behind Connor Bedard. 59 games, 22 goals, 23 assists, 45 points, 44% in the faceoff circle, plays about 16 minutes per game. One of his downfalls was his skating. Has worked big time on his skating and the way he skates, and he skates very, very comfortably now. And I think he can fit in really well in Marty St. Louis' system. This is a player whose name is not overly sexy. It's not overly attractive, but he plays on a team that isn't going to make the playoffs, would love to add a pick or would love to add a prospect. He's an unrestricted free agent. Chances are he's not going to re-sign there. This is a player I would covet, and I think he could be had.
Well, what do you think he could be had for in a career year with 22 goals and 23 assists ahead of the deadline? Because right now he's a rental.
Okay. Would you give a first-round pick?
No. I don't think Kent Hughes will give up a first-round pick for anybody who's in that situation. A 29-year-old unrestricted free agent pending.
What if he comes in and he helps you make the playoffs? And he does so well.
And that's all he'll do.
And he does so well. Would you have predicted that he would have 45 points in 59 games this year?
Playing loose free hockey in Chicago, where nothing else matters other than putting up points. He's capable.
Canadians played loose free hockey in the last 3 years. We never talked about them playing loose free hockey. We talked about the points they picked up.
Well, no, we definitely talked about them playing loose free hockey. But that's besides the point. Look, it's a novel idea. I think it's not the type of thing that the Canadians are pursuing. Whether or not they should is something you can argue and debate.
Perfect. Give me your name.
I don't think they should. I don't. It's an unrealistic name. Although a guy that has very similar production but is signed to a longer term contract and is younger.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Kyrou.
Whoa, I mean that's a big time player.
Now I'm not saying that player is available, and St. Louis is making kind of a late surge towards the deadline, much like the Canadiens.
Well, they're 1 point out of a wild card spot, mind you. But I prefer Robert Thomas if we're going to talk about.
But he was the guy who was essentially ruled out of anything that Doug Armstrong would do. But it seemed clear that they were intent on retooling their team, and if I was going to give up a premium asset, like it would cost, if not multiple ones, to get a guy like that I might be willing to do if I was someone like Kent Hughes. They want someone who fits in the age range of their developing core. They want someone that has the type of contract value that they can extract more out of him and get more value year over year than they would if they were just, throwing a pick at a pending unrestricted free agent who's 29 years old. I know a lot of people are looking at Dylan Cousins, who is 2 years younger than Kyrou, but if for whatever reason Doug Armstrong was considering moving just about anybody off his roster not named Robert Thomas, which seemed to be the case a few weeks ago and might not be the case anymore, he'd be a guy I'd be looking at. Now, I'm not sitting here saying the Canadians are going after Jordan Kyrou, and I don't think they are, and I don't think he's available. But that's the type of player. That's the type of player they should be looking at to fill what is the most obvious hole in their roster. And again, I don't think this kind of thing happens around the deadline. I'd be really surprised if it does. But the seeds will be sown between now and the deadline, and those conversations start or have started already, and they can germinate into something completely different by the time you get to the offseason. And I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of Canadiens fans who are like listing players in their minds that kind of fit that description. That they've probably done much more research than I have in terms of who might be available and who might be a guy they take a stab at here. But there will be offer sheet candidates. There will be opportunities to get this type of player in Montreal. The type of player that they hoped Kirby Dach will be. That unfortunately, that's in serious doubt now, considering the second injury to his knee and the way his season went. That they hoped Alex Newhook might be able to be, but I think what they have in Alex Newhook is a really good middle six player who can end up being a really strong third line player. I just think if you're sitting here like crossing your fingers that this is going to get solved between now and Friday, you might be sorely disappointed, but I do believe it will be solved between now and the beginning of next season.
Come on, Tony and Eric. Can you guys try to be realistic on whom the Habs can possibly acquire? Kyrou is a pipe dream. Hey, this coming in from Charles. Charles, I'm sorry, but I said Ryan Donato, 28-year-old centerman, who's a UFA at the end of the year. He makes $2 million for Chicago. Chicago's one of the worst teams in the National Hockey League. I'm sure they'd love to trade. I'm sure they'd love to have draft picks. The Canadiens have a ton of those. He's got 22 goals, 23 assists, 45 points this year. He's having a career year. I don't think I'm giving you an unrealistic name. I actually am giving you a very easy, realistic name.
I didn't say the Canadiens will go after Jordan Kyrou, that he's even available. I said that's the type of player that they're trying to. That's the type of player that they'd be interested in adding to their team. Not necessarily him specifically, but
I understand.
That mold of player that fits in the age range, has a long-term contract, could possibly move for a team that is trying to retool on the fly.
Yeah.
Start looking at names like that.
I understand you said it's not him. I'm just a little bit surprised you gave a winger, though.
Well, he can play center, too.
He can, but, Robert Thomas and Braden Shen are their top
Robert Thomas is already it's already known that he was off the table. He was never on it to begin with.
No, I hear you. Yeah, but they got Thomas, they got Shen, they got Sundqvist, they got Faxa.
Kyrou has played center, and
he has played center in the past.
He probably would be playing center if Braden Shen wasn't there. So
yeah, maybe
probably will be playing center if Braden Shen moves, which is very likely between now and the deadline. So.
Someone said Barrett Hayton. I mean, but I mean,
I don't know if he has that. I don't know if he has that guaranteed top six. He's got a hell of a shot, and he's a very good two-way player. He's a solid player.
Yeah, but Utah
he's
wants
more
to
in
hold
that
on.
middle six role. He's more in that middle six mold.
Utah wants to hold on to young players, though. They got Cooley and Hayton down the middle. They want to hold on to some of these players.
They want to get better one way or the other. Maybe the Canadiens have a young player at a different position that they might be interested in. Like, it's not to say that there's anything going on with the Habs and Barrett Hayton. I just, this is the way. If you have to make it this type of deal, if you have to go after a guy like Dylan Cousins or Jordan Kyrou, you have to be willing to potentially move something else, much like they did when they moved Alex Romanov to get a pick to acquire Doc. Like, there are things that could happen here. We're speculating right now, which I don't like to do to begin with, but it's just to say there's a certain type of player that you could see them going after if they're not going to sign one on the open market.
Joe Boyle just asked me a question on YouTube. He asked me if I'd be willing to give up Owen Beck and David Reinbacher for Dylan Cousins, and I would not be willing to do that personally. That's just me.
No. That doesn't even.
I was.
There's nothing like, if it's Cousins specifically who does not fit the mold of Kyrou. Kyrou's not exactly struggling through the season. You're not. That's not a deal where the Canadiens are going to have to give up all kinds of premium assets to get him. Which is why people should be questioning whether or not you'd want to get him at all. I know there's some people that love him. I think he comes with a buyer beware tag, considering the way things have gone for him in Buffalo. There's no denying it just hasn't worked.
The Sick Podcast is brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group, a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America. I'd like to give a shout-out to Playground as well. They're giving away over $120,000 in cash prizes this February at their cash game poker tables, 7 days a week and 5 nights a week. Go and play anytime from 9:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. or enjoy the late-night games from 9:30 p.m. to 2 a.m. for a chance to win payouts every 30 minutes. Get in on the action at Playground. Visit playground.ca for details. All right, without further ado, if we can, Arbor Jacki talked about Nick Suzuki's leadership. Listen to this.
His ability to show up every night and be the best player on the ice. I've had captains that were vocal leaders and some that weren't, and I think Nick is just, with his presence, it kind of brings all the boys up and lets us play.
And this is interesting because a lot has been said about Nick Suzuki, his captaincy. At one point, when things were up and down, it was like, maybe he's not vocal enough. Maybe he's not tough enough. Maybe he's not gritty enough. And now you see him doing his thing. It's unbelievable. 13 points since the return to hockey, since the Four Nations face-off, the leading point getter in the National Hockey League. Rupe Hintz may have tied him tonight. I think he's got a couple of points, but anyway, it's unbelievable. Cole Caulfield, on the mindset of the locker room, and Eric, then I'd like to hear from you. Let's hear from Cole Caulfield.
The next one, I think, just put every game behind us and keep pushing. I mean, we put ourselves in a spot to keep playing and play with purpose. So, we're really excited group in here, and it's good vibes around here. But again, we're just focused on the next one, and big road trip for us, and we're excited for that.
Eric, seems like the locker room's never been happier, huh?
Yeah, but they can't be too happy. Like they played a shit game for 45 minutes last night. They got a 3-0 lead and completely stopped playing. And you saw it the second they got the 3-0 lead that they
that happens. That happens.
And no. It's got to be a cautionary tale for them, because you know what? They have gone, like I said, 13 of 17 games they lost, and they won 19 of 30, and everything was great. Then they lost 8 of 9. And now they've won 5 in a row, and they can't afford to slip into the crapper now. Like that's the rhythm and pattern they've been in as the second youngest team in the league. I don't know if they've aged a little bit with Carrier coming in or whatever, but that's the pattern that they need to break if they want to take the biggest leap. They've taken many small steps forward. Okay. We thought they were going backwards. They've taken many small steps forwards. And you look at the young players and their contributions to that success. It's a huge thing for this rebuild. If they want to take the biggest leap, which is making the playoffs or giving themselves the best possible chance of making the playoffs, they have got to find a certain even keel, not only within games, but from game to game. They cannot follow up this 5-game winning streak by losing 3 in a row and then 5 of 7, and then it's over if they do that.
Yeah, I hear you. Let's hear from Marty St. Louis on trying to find consistency.
We just got to be more demanding of each other. We got to be more accountable to each other. I've learned too, as a coach, going through this. I think I'm better prepared now when I see that next one coming, maybe, in which we don't have time for that. So it's very important that we don't go on these 5-6 games and 5-6 games. We can't do that right now. The clock's ticking. So, we got to play hard. I got to coach hard. Got to be engaged.
A lot of games on the road in the month of March. Kind of reminds me when I was looking at the calendar, Eric, from middle of December to middle of January. I was looking at it. I was like, oh my God, I don't think they're going to win too many, because these are really, really tough games. And that's when they went on their best streak of the season, right? They beat Florida on Saturday in Florida. They beat Tampa Bay on Sunday in Tampa. They beat Vegas on Tuesday in Vegas. And then after that, they beat Colorado on a Saturday night. The week after that, they beat Utah, and they beat Dallas, and they beat the Washington Capitals on a Friday night. These were all games on the road that we're talking about. It was unbelievable. The Canadiens' next 4 games, they're going out west. They're going to be in Edmonton on Thursday night, in Calgary on Saturday night, in Vancouver on Tuesday night, and in Seattle on Wednesday night. And then they got Florida at home a couple nights later, Ottawa at home a couple nights later, in New York a couple nights later, versus Colorado at home a couple nights later. And then they finish off the month of March on a Tuesday in St. Louis, on a Thursday in Philly, on a Friday in Carolina, and on a Sunday afternoon in Florida. Man, the schedule is lethal in March, Eric. It's lethal.
Just doing some math here. The Habs have 21 games left.
Yes.
They have to win 13 of them. They win 13 of them and get, 1 extra point. It's 92 points.
Yeah.
If that doesn't get them in, I don't think we're going to be sitting here and saying they've failed colossally here. They've won 5 in a row, and they win 13 of the next 21. Their chances are really good. And what that really means is they have to win basically 2 out of 3 games. Every segment, every 3-game segment, 2 out of 3.
If the season ended tonight and the Canadiens don't make the playoffs, it was a successful season. They wanted to be in the mix, and they were in it right until the last second.
And you hope they keep it going. And I was talking with Mike Matheson about this. Like, he said, to be the type of team we want to be, it's not like you just wake up, flip the switch, and say, okay, we're here. Like, you build it gradually, game after game, week after week, month after month, year after year. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There is so much value still to be extracted out of this season of the last 21 games. And it really comes down to the Canadiens finding that balance that I was talking about. That was my question to Marty St. Louis that produced that answer of, I need to be harder. We need to be more demanding of ourselves. He's right. Like, the games and the margins, like Nick saying last night, we can't afford to get comfortable. The minute we do, it comes right back at us. Like, they should have learned this by now. Like,
yeah,
this is the one thing that they need to get behind them already. To hear Jack Guy talking about after the game how, like, they haven't been in the 3-0 spot often enough to, like, understand how they should properly deal with it. Learn from it yesterday and move on, and like, make sure the lesson is banked. Like, that's how good teams become great. Good teams become great by learning from those experiences quickly and adapting. And the Canadiens have had a number of lessons served to, or the same lesson served to them several times this season. Not just within games where, they blew a lead to Toronto and boom, or they blew a lead to Buffalo and managed to get rescued in overtime. Like, the streaks, the up and down, it's enough with that. And they better hold themselves to a much greater level of account to ensure that they don't slip. And I'll tell you, like, we've all watched it happen. They played 2 good games before the break and then won these 5, right? They did not play the best game in Buffalo. They definitely did not play the best game in Montreal. And they're going into Edmonton, where Edmonton has been playing shit hockey for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, they're starving. And the Canadiens don't have Caden Gooley to shut down Connor McDavid, who's been very successful in that task, okay? Like, if for whatever reason it goes the way it looks as though it's trending, that needs to be one game and stop there, and they get right back at it and count. Like, they have to have that mentality from here to the end. No matter where they land, whether they make it or not, if they're able to find that balance and not get knocked onto their heels and then, like, just be flailing for 2 weeks, it will be another big step in their progress as a team that wants to go from we're not bad, we're actually good, to we're going to become the great team we're supposed to. Because, as you mentioned at the top of the hour, the contracts really set them up to be a great team moving forward. Like, the opportunities that are ahead to add
contracts
to this team
are amazing.
When you combine that with the experience they're getting and growing together, and what's happening in Laval, and what's happening around the hockey world with some of the prospects they have, they are really set up to be the team they want to be. They have to do things the right way.
By the way, Dallas ended up beating New Jersey, because when we started the show, we talked about the fact New Jersey's game was not a final, but it is a final. So Dallas win, and I'm just trying to see. Oh, my God, they scored the game-winning goal with 5 seconds left in regulation. Thomas Harley assist to Jason Robertson and Rupe Hintz.
New Jersey has some serious flaws to it.
And Dallas is seriously amazing, by the way.
Well, they're starting to come. Dallas is starting to play to its potential over the last couple of weeks. You could see it's getting to that next level, and that's what good teams do when the games get harder and tighter. Like, they find that extra level. Like, we're going to see if the Habs have another gear here. They're going to need one. Like, they're in a tight race. They're playing against good teams, and they're competing against good teams around them. Detroit last year, right? Like, we saw them do what the hope was that the Canadiens would have this year. Maybe, 1 point one way or the other, and the Canadiens land in or out of a playoff spot, and they have that type of year like Detroit did. And even Detroit right now is neck and neck, right? They're fighting for their lives.
Yeah.
But they are a better team this year than they were last year.
100% they are, yeah.
So,
we're going to hear from Lane Hudson on Mike Matheson. Before we do, Bittt Tibi launched their new Ultra Lager, a refreshing, thirst-quenching beer, perfect for chilly winter days. Only 90 calories, 2 grams of carbs, 4% ABV per can, available in a pack of 6 and 12 in grocery stores all around the province of Quebec. It's ultra light and ultra refreshing. And after we hear from Lane Hudson on Mike Matheson, I also want to hear from Brendan Gallagher on making it tough on Kent Hughes.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, couldn't be happier for him. You know, he's one of the nicest teammates. He's the best guy. I mean, he does a lot for this team, and to see him get one, it was pretty awesome.
Fun making the job difficult for Kent Hughes?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's what we've been saying, and I mean, Kent will tell you he's happy. He's happy. It's you know, he's in a situation. Nobody wants to be sellers. Everyone wants to be contending and obviously there's a lot of teams, and you know, it's not going to be easy. But we believe in here, and it's definitely capable. I mean, what are we, 1 point back? You know, we play good hockey. We take care of our own business. You know, we believe that at the end of the year we'll be where we want to be.
There you have it. Brendan Gallagher, we believe. Kent's happy, he says, and we believe at the end of the year we're going to be where we want to be. And Lane Hudson talks about Mike Matheson being the nicest guy in the world. They're happy for this guy. He scored the game-winning goal last night in overtime. Pretty cool. All right. So I don't know if we're going to talk over the next couple of days. I would imagine you're going to be – I'd love to talk to you on Friday, but I would imagine that you're going to be pretty busy Friday night when we do the show. So, you know, if you were a betting man, what do you expect?
I expect that if Kent Hughes moves anybody, it's going to be for the price that Kent Hughes wants to extract to move them. I expect that if he goes out and gets someone, it's going to be someone that not only helps them right now, but helps them in the future. I expect that all those options are on the table for him. And if he chooses to exercise none of them and just does nothing but sit on his hands, he will be fully justified, and nobody's really going to have a legitimate gripe about it. The Canadiens are in a good position. They're growing as a team. He's in a great position because he doesn't need to do anything. And when you don't need to do anything, that is a leverage that you have. And he's pretty good at using his leverage. So I think if you're a Canadiens fan, you should be pretty excited about where this team is going and what has developed so far this season. You can't rest on it and say it's guaranteed to continue to go well over the next 21 games. You would hope that it's going to, because if they, you know, literally fall apart from here to the end and, you know, instead of winning 13 of 21 games, win 5 of them, it's going to put a damper on what's been a very positive situation, considering how bad things looked in training camp and how much worse they looked a month into the season. So the work is not done. It's really just getting started. But I think the biggest thing for Canadiens fans is, like, you are now entering a different era of this whole thing. I'm not going to sit here and say the rebuild is over, but it is progressing in such a way that when it is over, what you're going to have is a really great hockey team. Like, I really think that things are aligned and set up for that to happen. And it would take a lot of terrible luck for it not to happen. And I don't know if it's going to happen starting next year or the year after, but it's coming. Like, they've done such good work, and things are aligned in such a way that it's coming.
Eric, why don't we take 5 questions before we call it a night?
I'd
By
love
the way,
to. I would love to.
We have about 1,400 watching right now on YouTube.
Cool.
We have a couple of hundred watching on Facebook, and we have a couple of thousand watching on Twitter. All right. So Canadiens fans are really excited. Once again, 1 point out of the second spot in the wild card, 3 points out of the first spot in the wild card. And your questions, which we're going to try and answer, Eric will try and answer in about a minute or two, are brought to you by MFD Painting. It's a family-run business. If you're looking to get your home or apartment building painted inside or out, no job too big, no job too small. MFD Painting is a family business, and they'll treat you like family too. I know that Mitch did that for me, and he'll do that for you. Check out MFD Painting on Facebook, or give them a call at 514-893-9856. Once again, no job too big, no job too small. MFD Painting. And they can paint your house like that, even with their eyes closed. I'm not so sure they're going to do it blindfolded, but I'm pretty sure they can if you ask them to. All right, okay, 5 questions. 5. Question number 1, AG. Someone mentioned Pavel Zacha. Tony, would you? Eric?
No. Again, falls in that middle 6 category and not bona fide top 6. I think the Canadiens are just aiming higher, and they should. Like, you have Evans done. You have Beck in the pipeline, Kapanen coming. You have Suzuki. And if Doc and Newhook end up being part of what would be a really good third line in a year from now, there's only one hole here to fill. And
yeah, it's the 2 hole.
I think you got to aim higher than someone who looks like he could play the part, but doesn't necessarily.
Yeah.
I think they got to aim higher than that.
I like Pavel Zacha, but he's got a drop off in his production. He had 59 points last year. I really liked him last year. 57 points the year before that. I really liked him then too. Here's a guy that was drafted by the Devils, former first-round pick, 6th overall, 6'3", 6'4", over 200 pounds. The contract is digestible, 4.75 over the next couple of years. But the decline this year was a little bit disappointing.
The age is problematic. Like, he's 27. It's really on the cutoff of, are you going to extract the type of value you need out of the player, and are they guaranteed to be a true upgrade? Like, you can't be aiming towards the middle here. You gotta have someone who's like guaranteed top 6 center.
Mind you, he's probably played his best hockey this season in about 2 of the last 3 weeks. But let's move on. Other questions. Benjamin says, how would you compare the Habs rebuild compared to the Senators, and what would it mean if the Habs have already if the Habs make the playoffs before the Senators? Eric?
It would mean that I was right about my preseason prediction that the Canadiens would finish ahead of the Senators in the standings, which might still happen. Every time the Senators take a bit of a lead in the standings, I hear from their fans every day, which is fine. Give it to me. If they end up ahead of the Habs, good for them. And I will say they made me a bit of a believer halfway through this season for a few different reasons. Like, one, they committed to playing this type of hockey that you need to play that I didn't necessarily believe they were going to commit to.
Neither did I.
Two, their defense held up a lot better than I thought it would, despite some injuries like Artem Zub going down. I thought was a big loss for them. Even losing Jacob Bernard-Docker, having 2 righties out of the lineup at that time, having to lean on a guy like Travis Hamonic, like, that was recipe for disaster, especially with Linus Ullmark on the sidelines. But their goaltending really came through. I have to give the Senators credit for what they've done so far this season, despite a recent losing skid. I think they will be in it all the way to the end, just like the Canadiens. Where are the Canadiens in their rebuild versus the Senators? I thought going into the season they were ahead in culture. I think some of the stuff I've been seeing from both teams since still makes me believe that. But they have some pieces in Ottawa that they should be really excited about. And I have to give Stützle credit. Like, he's becoming more of a complete player than I thought he would be. He's also learning to use his teammates a lot better. I find him to be quite
best player from that draft. Great
player. I felt he was very individual. Like, I never had any questions as to how many points he could put up.
It was
more like, can he find a way to not try to do everything himself? And I think with age, he's learning to do that. So they have things to be excited about. They still have a lot of work to do. But the Habs, like I said, when you have a contract structure in place where for 6-7 years you have guys like Slavkovsky, Caulfield, Suzuki, and Gooley on the numbers they're at, like, I'm very excited to see where they end up with Lane Hudson. You're locking in a core that you get a couple upgrades on those players at higher numbers, and you're laughing. Like, it's because you already have great players making numbers that are going to look real good considering where the cap is going. So I like where the Habs rebuild is at.
5,000 people watching between YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. It's pretty cool. Habs Mania running wild.
We can keep taking questions. I'm awake. However many you want to take, we can take them.
I know, but I got to pee because I just drank 4 liters of water. All right, okay. Next question.
Oh, boy. No. He's their 4th line center.
Is Evans the planned 3rd center next year?
He's their 4th line center who will gain more ice time than most 4th line centers do because of his role on the penalty kill and because of his role as such a reliable defensive presence early in games and late in games. So, but no, he's the 4th line center. He might be one of the best 4th line centers in the game. I don't know if he's number 1 on that list.
Next year he'll be their 4th for you?
Yep.
So Beck's going to be where?
He's going to be sharing center responsibilities with one of Newhook or Doc on what will be the 3rd line.
Oh, I see. You got Newhook or Doc on the 3rd line. All right.
Yep.
So you got pretty much
if not both of them with Beck.
Yeah, so you got 3 offensive lines for the Canadiens next year.
Well, I think Alex Newhook is really learning to be a good two-way player here. Like, I really think Alex Newhook
he was a third-line centerman on a team that won the Stanley Cup in Colorado.
I know, and I think he'd be a much better third-line center now based on his experience than he was then. Like, I also think him and Beck sharing those responsibilities is a great way to break back in. I think Doc could end up being middle 6 next year. I think he could see time in the top 6 as a winger. I think he could see time at center if there's an injury. I think he could see time on the third line with Newhook and Beck, and you'd have a pretty good third line. Or maybe Heineman will work his way in there and Beck will find his way on the fourth line at times. Like, there's a lot of different permutations of where this can go, and it's probably way ahead here. But if you're asking me where Jake Evans slots in next year, it's going to be their fourth line center, and for the next 3 years after that too.
You got Oliver Kapanen on the Canadiens next year?
I don't know. Let's see what he looks like when he comes to camp and whether or not he seems as prepared to take on the season as, say, Emil Heineman did this year.
I hear you. If Armia if they don't bring back Armia, there's a chance that their fourth line next year could be Heineman, Evans, and Kapanen. But once again, we'll wait.
They might not. They might not. Like, you do have to create, like, one space has to be created for a second line center that's going to come in here.
There's no doubt.
And one space will have to be created for Owen Beck to be a full-time player with the Canadiens, and potentially for Oliver Kapanen to have an opportunity to play with the Canadiens. So, I don't want to sit here and say Josh Waugh has no chance of being who knows what'll happen come camp. I know one thing for sure. I don't think Emil Heineman, before camp started, was a guy that, yes, he had promised to potentially make the roster, but I don't think everybody was looking at him and saying he's going to take Joshua Waugh's spot. I don't think everybody was looking at Kapanen and saying he's going to come in and he's going to play the first 10 games of the season. Like, before he arrived here, I know people were looking at him and say he might surprise people. Yeah. But, like, let's see what happens. That's the beauty of having so many players that have NHL potential, is you can bring them to camp and see what they actually show you. Because Heineman this year came to camp and showed them. He like fully owned his position in this roster, and look at what he's doing now.
Last question. Tony, do you consider signing Ryan Donato, who's a left center, more important than integrating Beck, Kapanen, and Hage, who are unfortunately all right centers? What I'm saying, Charles, is that I think the Canadiens need a second-line centerman yesterday, and I would go after a guy like Ryan Donato right away for a playoff push, and then we'll see what happens in the summer. But I would go after Ryan Donato for a playoff push, yes. Once again, I don't know what they're asking for. I don't think they could be asking for the moon. I don't think Ryan Donato plans on re-signing with the Chicago Blackhawks. Maybe he does, and so whatever.
Listen, he has 23 goals and 24 assists. Is that what you said? 22 goals and 23
22
assists?
and 23, 45 points in 59 games.
Okay, he's 28, and he's a UFA to B, and he makes $2 million.
Yeah.
If they can't get a first-round pick for him, Kyle Davidson should step down as GM.
Yeah.
If they're thinking of trading him, okay?
Yeah.
Ken Hughes is already on the record, and he said it halfway through the season. He is not giving up a first-round pick for a rental. Like, that's not the position the Canadiens are in, and it's not what they should. It's fair and well for you to say it's something you would do.
I understand that. Of course. Yeah, it's not my pick. It's his.
They have a lot of picks. They have a lot of picks.
Yeah.
They have a lot of prospects. They have assets that if they wanted to, but they don't want to just be a playoff team. And that first round pick that they gave up to get a guy like Ryan Donato, who might walk in free agency, and let's face it, at 29 years old or 28, is he 28 or 29?
He'll be 29 in a couple of months. Yeah.
He'll be 29 is probably not the ideal age for a player that profile that fits with their timeline of what they want to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for them to do something like that when they could take that first round pick potentially this summer and trade it for a player that's 3 years younger and still has upside, 3 or 4 years younger and still has upside to not only be a second line center, but be like one of the better ones.
I totally agree with that.
That's why they won't. That's why they won't. You don't like Ken Hughes is a competitive guy. And
yeah.
What Gallagher said about him is true. Like, he wants to win.
They're going to have to identify the right one. A couple of years ago, the Washington Capitals, and look, I don't think the Capitals identified Dylan Strome as that guy. They obviously got lucky with him. They obviously got lucky.
Well, they saw potential. They definitely saw potential to and enough.
I think he said that was the only offer
right?
that he got. I think he said that was the only offer that he got or something.
There you go.
Canadiens went after Kirby Dach in a trade, and Washington got Dylan Strome as an unrestricted free agent. He worked out, and sometimes you got to get a little bit lucky too. We'll see what happens, but I totally agree with that, by the way, that if they want to keep their first-round pick, to trade it in the summer to get somebody younger and better than Donato, then I would obviously do that. All right? Eric, thanks so much. The next couple of days are going to be really, really interesting. Trade deadline on Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, and once again, the Montreal Canadiens signed Jake Evans. What a deal. 4 years, $2.85 million. And Jake, good for you for saying, you know what? I love it here. I'm going to stay here. Everyone wins. Ciao, Eric.
Ciao. Enjoy the trade deadline.
Thank you very much. I will. Special thanks to Sammy and Yellow at Master Control, and to all of you, and of course to all of our sponsors. MFD Painting is one. Bomboloni and BomboloniBoss.com. The others in 10 metros. La Bittt at Tibi, Playground, Energy Transportation Group, and Betway. Thank you so much for being there. We'll be back tomorrow night, same time, same place. It's a Sick Podcast. I'm Marinaro. Canadiens 1 point out of a wild card. 1.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. LaBita.tb, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.